well, then you can give Doug his walking papers. But oh, by the way, you need to give Howie his walking papers too. And you get out the broom and you sweep the whole place clean and you restart the entire organization. I thought it was woefully unfair that Pederson got the heave-ho and Howie Roseman was allowed to continue on in his position as the general manager. Did the Eagles do Doug dirty?
Yeah, I don't see how you can look at it any other way. You're talking about a head coach fired less than 3 calendar years off a Super Bowl championship. I mean, what else do you say? I mean, we always joke there's a lifetime dispensation card if you win a Super Bowl. There certainly should be in a city where they had never won one and they were looking for a championship for the first time since 1960. And he didn't last 3 years. I still sit here today and shake my head. I don't know how that happened. And it happened because the owner has gotten deeper and more deeply ingrained into the day-to-day operations of the team. And we're going to have Rob Motti on in the second hour from the AP. I want to ask Rob as well. Why is Jeffrey Lurie getting into the weeds when it comes to assistant coaches? We all know owners in this league, Jody. They have to be involved in the big decisions, the head coach, the quarterback even. You could argue the coordinators. I can buy that. Jeffrey Lurie's getting involved with position coaches? Where's the expertise? Where's the common sense?
Johnny Mac, let's talk some Eagles coaching staff. You and I, leading up to the offseason, talked as much as we could about Doug Pederson and the season that he had and the position that he was in with the Philadelphia Eagles. My position was, when the season was coming to an end, was pretty standard. I did not move off it, that I thought Doug Pederson needed to be retained. That while he had a lousy season, and I was willing to put a lot of blame for the Eagles' putrid offense on his plate and his play calling, we were still just 2+ years removed from him being a Super Bowl winning coach. If you wanted to take a major reaction to the hideous season the Eagles had, all right, well, then you can give Doug his walking papers. But oh, by the way, you need to give Howie his walking papers too. And you get out the broom and you sweep the whole place clean and you restart the entire organization. I thought it was woefully unfair that Pederson got the heave-ho and Howie Roseman was allowed to continue on in his position as the general manager. Did the Eagles do Doug dirty?
Yeah, I don't see how you can look at it any other way. You're talking about a head coach fired less than 3 calendar years off a Super Bowl championship. I mean, what else do you say? I mean, we always joke there's a lifetime dispensation card if you win a Super Bowl. There certainly should be in a city where they had never won one and they were looking for a championship for the first time since 1960. And he didn't last 3 years. I still sit here today and shake my head. I don't know how that happened. And it happened because the owner has gotten deeper and more deeply ingrained into the day-to-day operations of the team. And we're going to have Rob Motti on in the second hour from the AP. I want to ask Rob as well. Why is Jeffrey Lurie getting into the weeds when it comes to assistant coaches? We all know owners in this league, Jody. They have to be involved in the big decisions, the head coach, the quarterback even. You could argue the coordinators. I can buy that. Jeffrey Lurie's getting involved with position coaches? Where's the expertise? Where's the common sense? I'm amazed at the lack of autonomy he gave Doug Pederson. Not at first. That's fine. Doug was a first-time coach. He was taking a bit of a jump. He didn't get interviews. You could put him on a short leave, but he earned the rights. And Jeffrey Lurie, by the end, was telling him every year, Doug Pederson did not want to fire Mike Rowe. Doug Pederson did not want to fire Carson Walsh. Now, I know the fans did, but Doug should have the right to have his own assistant coaches. And that's why it came to loggerheads after this season. The Eagles were going to keep Doug Pederson. but they put that on him. You got to make these changes. And Doug said, no, I want to elevate Press Taylor to be offensive coordinator. I want to elevate Matt Burke to be defensive coordinator. Jeffrey Lurie said no. Hey, and then he hires, by the way, Jody, a first-time head coach and Nick Sirianni. It gives him more autonomy over his over his coaching staff than the guy who won the Super Bowl. How does that make any sense?
It doesn't, and it still boggles my mind, and that's why I want to get into the whole staff. That Nick Sirianni, with slight help, less help than Doug Pederson ever got, has assembled the staff that he's got. But before we go there, were you on the Eagles beat for SI when Doug was hired and the first staff in the Pederson, now begone Pederson era was put together?
Not SI, but I was here working for another outlet. So, yeah, I was here for every day of the Doug Pederson era.
How much do you think that first staff that Doug had was because Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman wanted to be in control of that staff? Or how much of it was when Doug came in, Doug was so married to being a play caller, just happy to have an NFL job, when the Eagles suggested we still have some coaches under contract? Because remember, Chip Kelly was fired before the Eagles were planning on firing him. He had time left on his contract. A lot of the assistant coaches had times left on their contract. And from when you make that kind of a change, you tell a new head coach, we at least sit with these guys, have a meeting with these guys. If you like them a lot, you can keep them. And, by the way, save the organization a bunch of money. But if you don't, well, then we'll fill out the rest of your staff as you see fit. How much of it was that the Eagles pushed Doug to keep as many coaches as he did? Or how much of it was Doug was like, hey, I'm the head coach. You surround me with anybody you want. I'm cool with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jody, that happens everywhere, to be fair. I mean, every coaching change, you do have a group of assistant coaches, sometimes that are usually under contract and you want to keep, sometimes because you don't want to go out and pay a different coach, but sometimes because you really like the coach and you want to keep them around. So that part of it's not that rare. I don't have an issue with the Eagles. But, now that I look back on it, one of the interesting things about their narrative when it comes to giving Nick Sirianni more of a rope than Doug Pederson, I find so counterintuitive. So I want to run this by you. Number one, the theory is that Doug came in under Andy Reid here and left with Andy Reid when Andy got fired and went to Kansas City. So he was never with another coach. He didn't build relationships around the league with different staffs. So what the Eagles say to me is Nick Sirianni's been in different places, whether it was the Chargers, the Colts, going back to his, all the way when he started. He built relationships. He had a bigger networking pool, so to speak, to draw from. But my point is, and this is we'll go all the way back to the draft when people criticize Justin Fields. You're a fan of him. I'm a fan of him. Some people say he can't get to his second or third progression. And Justin Fields says to them, if my first progression is open, I'm going to throw the football.
Isn't that the way football works? You have a first read. If the first read is there, you take the first read. That's why it is the first read, because the coaching staff believes it's going to be a successful play. If the guy's open, you throw him the football.
Exactly. So my point being, if you're a coach and you're under a successful head coach and you're not getting fired, why the heck are you going to leave them? So you're either unsuccessful, you're getting fired, and you're networking, and that gives you a better chance to develop relationships to get coaches. That's what I find completely counterintuitive. I mean, you're penalizing Doug Pederson for having success. It's bizarre to me.
Agreed. But just let me spin it off this way. If you disagree with me, please feel free to do so and tell me I'm wrong. I remember when Andy got the job, and I was on WIP with my other Mac partner, Glenn McDowell. We had Jeff Lurie on shortly after the hire. And I remember Laurie telling us one of the things that impressed him about Andy Reid. Because when Andy Reid was hired by the Philadelphia Eagles, not only had he never been a head coach before, he hadn't even been a coordinator yet. He had only been a positional coach in Green Bay. And it seemed like a kind of a risque, if not avant-garde type selection. And Jeff Lurie came on our show and told us one of the things, one of many things, but one of the things that really stood out, jumped out to him was Andy Reid, for his interview, came in and he had binders full of reports and reasons on why he was going to target specific individuals to join him and help him make up his coaching staff. And he believed these were the best individuals that if the Eagles could get them involved, they could put a hell of a coaching staff together in Philadelphia. And oh, by the way, a lot of those coaches have gone on to be very successful head coaches in the National Football League.
That 1999 staff was unbelievable. I mean, So you're right. And what I would say to that is Andy Reid is one of the greatest coaches of all time. So it doesn't surprise me that he was very organized early on. And I know Joe Banner, I was trying to get Joe Banner on the show. He's had back surgery. I know that Joe regards that as his best moment in Philadelphia, hiring Andy Reid. So one, I would say Andy's a little bit different. But number two is the fact that, okay, you know, it was pretty clear the Eagles didn't believe in Doug Pederson when it came to his assistant coaching staff because it was pretty consistent. But I will say this, Jody, you know, if you go back to 2016, the Eagles were considering moving on from Doug Pederson after one season. And more so, after they decided to stay the course, which thankfully they did, they wanted to fire Frank Reich, who they gave to Doug Pederson. And it was Doug Pederson who saved Frank Reich's job and sort of went to the went to the wall for him and kept Frank Reich around. The Eagles, because your team, the New York Jets, wanted to hire John DeFilippo as the offensive coordinator, the Eagles wanted to sort of satisfy him and elevate him. And my point being, they never trusted Doug with the assistant coaching staff. And again, I don't necessarily have a problem with that in 2016. I have a problem with that post 2017.
Right, Super Bowl win.
Yes. That from that point forward, he's earned that right. And I will forever believe that.
The point I was getting to about Andy Reid and him having binders full of assistant coaches, we know how good that group has become over the last 20 years. When Doug showed up to get the job and interviewed, I'm pretty sure he didn't have any binders with him. No. I'm pretty sure he was very open-minded to what the Eagles were suggesting as to what his staff could be. If he was an underling of Andy Reid, at some point, you got to look to the guy. If he's done what he's done in his career and had the run that he had here in Philadelphia, and he takes you to Kansas City and you're building the program there and you're getting some good press and you're getting interviews, was Doug Pederson that above the fray that he just didn't sit down and say, yo, Andy, I'm going to get my first interview here. Any tips, any pointers? You've only been coaching in the league 20 plus years. I would think Doug be a bright enough guy to say, hey, Andy, can you give me a helping hand here so that maybe I can get the job? Oh, by the way, you're going to interview for the team that hired Andy Reid, and you two guys came together in 1999 when he brought you in as the backup quarterback. Did Doug just not care? Did he not even ask Andy how he should handle it? Because the way Andy handled it and the way we assumed Doug handled it seemed to be night and day.
No, one thing I know about Andy Reid, he takes tremendous pride, Jody, in his guys going on to becoming head coaches because his tree has become what it's become. And there are certain coaches who don't groom their assistants to be head coaches. Andy's the exact opposite. As I said, he takes pride in it. So I'm sure he had those conversations with Doug Pederson and things you have to do. But on the other hand, you have to say to yourself, okay, Doug wasn't on anybody's radar. There's a bit of revisionist history. The Eagles wanted to hire Adam Gase. They wanted to hire Ben McAdoo. Ben McAdoo
sure, yeah,
was on the turnpike coming down to accept the job when the Giants got him to turn around. And so you can imagine how bad things have gone, especially if Gase was here. Gase demanded 53-man roster power, and they were just coming off Chip Kelly and just wouldn't come off that point. So that's what kind of derailed Adam Gase to Philadelphia. So, Doug was at best plan C. I'm not even bringing up Tom Coughlin. There's varying degrees of, some people say there was significant interest there. Some people say it was a little bit overblown. But at best case scenario, Jody, he was plan C. So my point at that stage is he's not getting other interviews. So, yes, he's willing to accept certain things to be a head coach. There's only 32 of these jobs. I think that part of it is completely fair. But I look at this team, and we'll go back to Andy Reid again. Well, we go back to 2016 and Doug's first receivers coach. We often joke there was no, every year there was a different receivers coach with this team. Greg Lewis was number one. Doug Pederson wanted to keep him. Okay. He was overruled. Greg was fired. Where did he land? With Andy Reid in Kansas City. Ken Flajole was the linebackers coach here for years. People say the Eagles needed an upgrade, blah, blah, blah. He's too old, Social Security, that kind of stuff. Who hires him last week? Andy Reid. Are these assistant coaches that bad? You tell me.
I don't think they were that bad either. And yes, even though the Doug Pederson era has come to an end here in Philadelphia, I don't think he's going to complain about the way things went for the most part, because the Super Bowl is going to outweigh absolutely everything. All right, I want to get one more point in here with you before we take a timeout and then start to actually analyze the guys that have been hired. You did mention that there was at least a conversation after Doug Pederson's first season that the Eagles might be looking to make a change, that it didn't go as planned. Again, I don't think it was all on Doug Pederson. They put the staff together. When I say they, I mean he and Howie. They decided to move away from their proven quarterback, Sam Bradford, and put Carson Wentz in probably a little before his time. I don't think it would have been right to let Doug Pederson go after only 1 year. They didn't, and the rest, as they say, is history with the Super Bowl that very next season. How close, according to your sources, how close was it that the Eagles were to pulling the plug on Doug Pederson after only 1 year?
I don't think it was terribly close. I think it was closer that they were going to pull the plug on Frank Reich, which is interesting because of the revisionist history now. And obviously Frank is regarded, and he is a very good NFL head coach, but in this city, he's regarded as even more than that because of the Super Bowl, because how things have gone bad with Doug Pederson, and now Frank is given the credit, and the offense went down when he left. You know the story, Jody. So, and by the way, the new coach, Nick Sirianni, is now a Frank Reich acolyte. So they picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Frank, who should we hire?" And it's interesting to me that you go back to 2016 after that season, and they said, "Okay, this isn't going to work." And Doug Pederson, as I said, saved Frank Reich's job. But that to me was the bigger issue. And a lot of that, to be honest, Jody, also had to do with John DeFilippo and the fact that the Jets wanted him. The Eagles had him under contract, blocked him, so he was not happy about that. And they wanted to make him happy. So it wasn't all they thought Frank did a bad job. It was just they were trying to make a decision. They wanted to keep John DeFilippo. But I will say this. I think 2016, you mentioned Carson Wentz. They traded Sam Bradford, I think it was 11 days before the start of the regular season. That's when Teddy Bridgewater got hurt. That was that horrific injury. So the Vikings were in panic mode. The Eagles were able to take advantage of that. And Carson Wentz had done nothing in the preseason. Remember, he was injured he got injured. I believe it was a broken rib at the time. So he barely had a preseason. And then all of a sudden, it's week 1. You got 11 days to get a rookie quarterback ready who's coming in from North Dakota State. Obviously not Alabama, not Oklahoma, not Clemson, North Dakota State. And they ended up winning 7 games that year. I think it was a darn good job, to be honest.
And, oh, by the way, the thing that I was just blatantly flat out wrong about the way that went down. On the day that I was on the air, that they ended up trading Bradford, I said, well, then guess what? Get ready for the Chase Daniels era, because they decided that Chase Daniels was this great backup quarterback that they overpaid to bring in here. Well, it was a foregone conclusion. You're going to trade Bradford because someone's crazy enough to give you a first-round pick for him? Okay, fine. I'm with you on that. But we got to live through the Chase Daniels era. It just made too much sense because Chase Daniels was Doug Pederson. That's what Doug's job was. When Doug came here to the Eagles as a player, you knew he was a placeholder for whatever the period of time was going to be before Andy Reid was going to turn it over to Donovan McNabb. I absolutely believe that Doug Pederson is going to do the same thing with Chase Daniels. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 6 games at the max, and then Carson Wentz is going to come in. They said, nah, we're not even going to be bothered. Carson, here you are. You're starter week 1. You could have knocked me over with a feather that Chase Daniels didn't start week 1 that year. So Pederson did derivate when he needed to off what looked to be the plan. And yeah, I think he had an overall great career as an Eagles coach. Last season is the reason that he got fired. And the NFL is a tough business. You can go that badly in 1 year and have it cost your job. It did for Doug Pederson. So we have a new Eagles coaching staff to talk about. When we come back, I'll get Johnny Mac's insight on a couple of the main guys. We'll go through them all, but I want to get some insights on some of the main guys, certainly Nick himself as the head coach, all the coordinators. Eagles coaching staff, what we're discussing here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The middle.
We need a Lil Maze. Wait, what was the commercial?
Yeah, Harry goes, I don't need a Lil anything.
You'd have Lil Harry or Lil Maze.
Lil Maze.
And you pull a string, and it says, I am out. Or sort of like 4 or 5 different Maze sayings.
Now that's an idea. Did you see a Shander doll? It never stops talking.
No.
You don't even need to pull the string.
The Middle with Eitan Shander, Barrett Brooks, and Harry Mays. Weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern.
The light from a star can take millions of years to reach Earth. So when you look at a star, you're looking back in time. But I see the future. I see exploration and courage. I see my country finding new horizons out there. And I see giant leaps making a comeback. I see myself. The future is where I'll make history.
Jody Mack, the legendary sports talker, joins forces with NFL insider John McMullen. Start your morning with Johnny Mack and Jody Mack across the JAKIB Media Network.
missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.